When I lived on East Smoot Road, my younger brother Brian and I shared a small bedroom filled with toys and echoes of childhood laughter. Our neighborhood was quiet, where the sounds of crickets and rustling leaves filled the night air. But there was something unsettling about our home, a lingering sense of dread that crept in at night when shadows grew long and darkness settled over everything. One night, after a long day of outdoor adventures, I was tucked into bed, the familiar weight of my blanket providing comfort. Brian was asleep in his bed across the room, his gentle breathing a soothing rhythm in the otherwise still air. As I lay there staring at the ceiling, I felt a creeping sensation, as if something were watching me. Suddenly I heard it, a faint sound like soft footsteps pattering against the floor, approaching my room. The sound was so quiet at first that I wondered if I was imagining it, but then it grew clearer, a rhythmic tapping that echoed in the stillness of the night. My heart raced as I strained to listen, the footsteps drawing closer. As I turned to peer into the darkness, I felt a chill creep down my spine. The door to my room creaked open slowly, and to my horror I saw them. Strange little dolls entering my room, one after the other. I had never seen them before. They weren't toys we owned. Their mismatched features and shiny eyes glinted in the dim light, and they moved with an unnatural grace, their tiny feet padding softly across the floor. The first doll was small, its porcelain face cracked and chipped, but its eyes shone with a malevolent glimmer. It waddled toward my bed, followed by another doll, slightly taller, with wild hair and a twisted smile. The sound of their footsteps sent chills through me as they advanced, their eyes fixed on me with an unsettling intensity. "Brian," I whispered urgently, shaking him awake, but he merely groaned and rolled over, oblivious to the horror unfolding beside him. The dolls continued their sinister march, their tiny footsteps echoing in my mind, growing louder and more insistent. The smallest doll reached my bed first, its vacant smile twisting into something more sinister. It climbed up the blankets, and I could feel the weight of its plastic body pressing down on me. Panic surged through me as I scrambled back, pressing myself against the headboard. But there was nowhere to escape. One by one, the dolls climbed onto my bed, the shortest at the foot and the tallest closest to me. Their eyes glimmered like dark jewels, watching me with an intensity that felt invasive. I could hear their shallow, raspy breathing filling the air around me, each intake a reminder of the nightmare unfolding. "Leave me alone," I screamed, my voice breaking the silence of the night. I flailed my arms, trying to push them away, but they seemed to absorb my panic, their breathing quickening in response. The tallest doll leaned in, its eyes wide and unblinking, as if it could see right into my soul. In that moment, I realized that they weren't just dolls. They were something far more sinister, paranormal entities that had invaded my room, vessels of a darkness I couldn't comprehend. I felt their tiny hands gripping the fabric of my blanket, pulling me into a suffocating embrace. I braced myself, ready to fight against the terror that surrounded me. Just as the horror reached its peak, I heard a loud crash from the other side of the room. It was Brian, knocking over a stack of books in his sleep, the noise jolting me back to reality. The dolls froze for a split second, their breaths halting in unison, and in that moment, I seized my chance. I bolted out of bed, tearing myself away from their grasp. The dolls began to stir, their eyes narrowing as they turned to follow me with their gaze. I dashed out of the room, heart pounding, and slammed the door behind me, leaning against it as I tried to catch my breath. "Stevie, what's wrong?" Brian mumbled sleepily, blinking at me through the darkness. "Dolls. They're alive," I stammered, my voice trembling. But as I looked back at the door, I could see nothing but the stillness of the night. The dolls were gone, their presence receding into the shadows. Brian sat up, rubbing his eyes. "You're just dreaming. There's nothing there." But I knew what I had seen. I could still hear their breath echoing in my ears, the chilling reminder of the terror I had just escaped. I spent the rest of the night huddled on the floor beside Brian's bed, clutching a pillow tightly, too afraid to close my eyes. The next morning, I gathered the courage to return to our room. The bed was empty, and the dolls were nowhere to be found. I tried to convince myself that it had all been a nightmare, but the sense of dread lingered in the air. From that day forward, I kept my distance from the area where the dolls had appeared, refusing to play with them or even acknowledge their existence.